Everyone, welcome back. This will be our final lecture this semester, so dry those crying eyes as we move forward and look to new things and new adventures. I just wanted to leave you with a brief discussion on more contemporary art. As we kind of began this semester, we were taking a look at the Renaissance and some of the standards of the Renaissance, and I want to leave you off by taking a look at our world and how artists are representing this today and how it looks different. And I want to teach you a couple aspects of how to study contemporary art rather than just saying it looks silly or it looks stupid or it looks like anybody can do it. I want you to push past those particular feelings and think about why is an artist choosing to represent a work of art in this particular manner, right? And so a lot of our contemporary art is going to reflect our world, and they're seeking to do things that are new and unique to but that's not necessarily anything that's new to the art world. I mean, all artists are seeking in some way, shape, or form to be different from their predecessors. That's what we see with the Renaissance. They're trying to do something different from the Middle Ages and trying to replicate art. And as often is the case, art in the world it was created because it's new and different from the tradition. Excuse me. It's not going to be widely accepted at first. And so that's the thing about art, is that you need to have a little bit of patience and have a bit of an open mind as we approach it. I want to take a look at John Dewey and his definition of modern, contemporary, or I'm going to use the term postmodern art. The original definition that he suggests that art began right at the beginning, that art was about reflecting the human experience, what we valued, what we did on a day-to-day basis. And so on the bottom left-hand side, side of the screen, you see a Greek vase that was representing Greek mythology, what they valued, but it was also something that was integral to what they utilized on a day-to-day basis. And so he suggests that art initially was all about representing what we value, but also about being useful. And he suggests that over the years, that definition has lost its meaning, that art is no longer about having this day-to-day impact. What we generally do with art is we now lock it in a museum, and then we can only visit it under certain circumstances. And he suggests that that's really problematic because it separates art from the experience in which it was created, and it divorces that its original meaning. And so he suggests that what we need to do is that we need to find a way to reintegrate art and experience to bring them together. And so a lot of what contemporary art is seeking to do is just that, to find ways to bridge modern art with the contemporary experience, rather than just locking something up in a museum to collect dust over years and years. They want it to be more immersive for the public. And so this is going to be one of the driving forces of contemporary art that's out there, to be more experiential, to be more integrative, to be more engaging for the viewer. And so he suggests the new definition of art should be about reflecting human activities in a certain way to bring people in on that discussion. It should be both mentally and physically engaging in some way, and we'll see art is seeking to do that. It's supposed to represent an ordinary experience. That's what he's advocating for, rather than something extraordinary. It should be really what we do on a day-to-day basis, right? Because what we do on a day-to-day basis is kind of who we are. And so if art is supposed to reflect who we are, it should be what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And he suggests it also should be purposeful. It should have some type of meaning, or should have that idea of directing society in some particular way. And in a lot of ways, contemporary art is going to be influenced by Dadaism. And we've taken a look at this in the previous lecture on Dadaism's influence. And it's going to cast a lasting shadow, because Dadaism is a clear break from the Renaissance, right? The Renaissance casts this large shadow over like 200, 300, 400 years of art. And what we see with Dadaism is it's going to seek to remove that shadow. I guess it even goes up to 400, 500, 600 years of a shadow that it casts on the art world. And so Dadaism is seeking to break from that, to do something different, to do something unique. And one of the ways that it does this is questioning the role of the artist. Does an artist have to manipulate or mold or sculpt something with his or her hands? Does an art have to be beautiful for it to be art? Does it have to have some type of specific meaning for it to be art? And so we see that kind of questioning of what is the purpose, right? What is the main idea of art? What should it be? And we see that questioning with Dewey as he takes a look at, the contemporary art, that art shouldn't just be about just doing the same old things. It needs to be doing, trying to connect with the human experience. And another major work of another movement that influences contemporary art is going to be surrealism. Surrealism is all about investigating the self and trying to understand who am I within the world. And so it's a psychological journey of interiority. And in a lot of ways, contemporary art is going to also seek to do that as well, right? Trying to find our place within the world. I wanted to give you a definition of postmodernism. In breaking down the term itself, post means after, and then modernism just means, from 1965 about the, Impressionism until it ends, which I would say it probably ends around World War II, because we find ourselves in a significantly different world. So postmodernism is something that takes place after modernism, right, in this basic sense. But it's an ambiguous term. It has it's been widely debated on what it means and what it encompasses, and I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview. If you want more information on this, I teach an entire course on postmodernism in my Humanities 305 class, which goes into much more depth. But I just wanted to give you get your feet wet so you can understand some of the art that surrounds us, some of the world that we live in, and how art is trying to represent that. Postmodernism is a historical, meaning it has a certain fixed point in time. Some people suggest that it ends with the September 11th attacks in 2001. It's a cultural, meaning it influences culture and how we create things and how we make meaning, and social, meaning it influences the way that we interact with each other and see ourselves. That began after World War II. It mistrusts authority due to inherent human corruptions, and so it carries that idea, that criticism of Dadaism over, that we can't trust authority and institutions because they can be corrupt. They can lead to things like World War I and World War II, for instance. It criticizes past theories and ideas because such concepts have proved to be inadequate and problematic. They've left us, right? They led us to this point where we're standing, and they also stifle change. And so old ideas make it hard to come up with new ideas because we get so fixated and so stuck on those old ideas that we can't see to do anything new or different. It's and we kind of see that with masks, right? Masks is a new way of doing things, and we have these traditionalists out there suggesting that they kind of put their feet in the sand and they kind of kick against the prick, so to speak, and they're resisting change. And so tradition can be stifling at times. Its cultural manifestations, meaning its forms of human creation, invert or redefine traditional ideas to bring new understandings and complexities to light. And so this is where we see something like Into the Woods or Maleficent, which is taking a look at old stories and finding new interpretations for them. Or this is where we see like Twilight with the reinterpretation of vampires. They're no longer monstrous individuals waiting to suck your blood. There's some vegan ones or veggie ones. I don't remember what they call them in the book. But they're not monsters. They actually are hunky men that glisten in the sun, right? So taking a look at old ideas and trying to invert them to find new complexities. Postmodernism is an era that has tensions with the past, right, trying to remove itself from it, but also has great uncertainty about the future of humanity, feeling as though we're standing on the precipice or standing on the edge of our own extinction. And so this is where we see a lot of dystopian films come out, I Am Legend, or or The Giver, or The Hunger Games, these dystopian ideas start to emerge, believing that humanity is kind of at the end. There's some type of apocalyptic event that's on the horizon. And little did we know that it was going to be a virus in 2020. Taking a look at postmodern art, some of the main themes that I see within this, and I've been studying postmodern art for too long to tell you, for a long time, and these are some elements that I have found within them. It's kind of hard to take a look at postmodern art because Impressionist art, they all, they're a group of artists that come together and they say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Or Cubists, they have a manifesto, or Dadists have a manifesto to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Postmodern artists, you just have a million different artists doing a million different things, and so sometimes it's hard to kind of find a way to put them in the box, in a certain type of box, as we tend to do within the humanities. So I'm going to try to put them in a box, but it's going to be really hard because anytime someone tries to put artists in a box, they tear down the box and they try to do something new. And so it is tough, but I'm trying to give you a couple broad ideas. Number one, they're against fixed narratives, this idea of telling a story, right? So Rembrandt's Bathsheba, the idea of telling a story visually, and that's kind of gone within the postmodern art world. I mean, you still see it to some extent, but for the most part, artists are seeking to be more open-ended. So we have television, we have films, we have all of these other elements that tell a story better than a painting can on a two-dimensional fixed canvas. So artists are seeking to kind of do something different from that because there's so many other ways to tell a story better than, painting a canvas anymore. So they're seeking to do something different. They're also trying to question the relationship of art and the artist. And so this is kind of a carryover of Dadaism. And what they're seeking to reveal is art as a process of creation. And this is kind of a question that began with Impressionism, right? So it's all about the artists and the artist's insights and impressions of seeing the world. And we see that carried over with Post-Impressionism with Van Gogh. The idea of the insights of the artist. But what they're seeking to do here, similar to previous eras of modern art, is they're seeking to show art as not just this fixed end, this thing that you could just kind of paint and then you hang it at a museum and it's done. They want to show art more as it's created, or as this kind of living entity. And so you're going to see that within a lot of postmodern art. They're also seeking to do new mediums, right? Adding photography, film, performance, finding different ways to convey the human experience rather than just the plastic arts. They're trying to do something kind of think outside the box, so to speak. They're critically examining our culture and some of the limitations of our culture so that we can improve it. And then they're also seeking to have more and more viewer participation. And I won't be able to show you too many postmodern works of art that do this. It would take a longer, more in-depth course to do that. I'm just going to give you some thoughts to consider. But they're seeking to try to incorporate the viewer as much as possible. So to kind of make it more of that art as a process of creation and connecting the artist and the art and the viewer. And then also, it's also individualized, and so you just have a lot of different artists doing a lot of different things. I like to start my discussion with postmodern art with Giacometti, because it really helps to encapsulate a lot of the concerns that are happening. We've talked about Dadaism and Surrealism before, and some of their anxieties about the direction of the human condition, all these violent tendencies that are below the surface, that comprise human nature, as Freud argues in Civilization and its discontents, that we're not gentle, friendly creatures wishing to be loved, but we are violent at our instinctual core. And he kind of picks up on this. He's heavily influenced by World War II, influenced by the Holocaust and how we often try to exterminate entire races of people. He had great fears about the direction of humanity, believing that we were on the brink of extinction. Thus, his sculptures reveal frail, hauntingly thin forms. His works undertake the postmodern world's challenges with things like such as nuclear holocausts, biological and chemical warfare, diseases such as cancer, AIDS, Ebola, environmental issues such as global warming and pollution. He captures our fears of tomorrow while displaying a muted hope of the future. And this is what his works of art look like. And what most people take a look at that and they say, well, that's ugly. And I think that he would say, yeah, that might be true. But what's it representing, right? What's it trying to convey? And he suggests that he was heavily influenced and inspired by these people that were in the Holocaust, right? Or that were in these concentration camps. And as they were emerging, right, as the United States and Russia go into Germany and start liberating these concentration camps, they see all of these thin, hauntingly frail forms that were not quite living and not quite dead. And he thought that's impressive that these individuals, despite all hope, found a way to move on. That there's these stories that emerge of these heroic feats by people that had nothing, that were willing to sacrifice the little that they had to give it to someone else who they felt was more in need. That is humanity. And that is inspiring. So even though his image looks kind of ugly or different, right? He's advocating that this is humanity in the postmodern world. We're standing on the brink of extinction. Any day or any moment we could have a nuclear holocaust that could end all life on Earth in 15 minutes. Or we can have biological or chemical warfare between corrupt politicians that are trying to wipe out another group of people. Mass genocide we could have at any given moment. Or we can have a disease that comes in and rips through humanity. So it seems as though, although we have all of this science and technology that we've built up over the years, and we have this great, tremendous reason and technology, we still are just children playing with toys, and we could just completely fail at any given moment. So, in some ways, he reflects that within his artwork, right? This idea that it could be all over for us. We could be standing on the extinction of our species, and we kind of feel that today, even before 2020. We can kind of feel that fear or that anxiety with all of the events that are going on within the world. But he also displays this element of hope, right? He was tremendously inspired by these individuals. Despite all hope, they got up and they continued to live. And so he suggests when we're kind of, our backs are against the wall, there's all of these forces that seemingly are seeking our destruction, what we need to do is we need to get up and we need to move on, right? So there is that sense of inspiration within his works. Want to take a look at Edward Hopper as well, all right? Comparable to Giacometti, Hopper's works display uncertainty about the contemporary world. They have a post-apocalyptic feel to them, with empty streets to demonstrate the growing emptiness of the world that we live in. The characters typically yearn for greater connectivity, but fail to find it generating a melancholy mood. His works are visually more realistic, yet they exhibit much of the same concerns of other artists of this era. And so in a lot of ways, maybe we kind of feel with social isolation and the problems that we're experiencing today of loneliness and fatigue, we can see that Hopper is a tremendous voice for that. Here in Nighthawks, I think of this one is much more accessible to students, or people, particularly in the outside of the academic world. They see this and they say, it's visual reality. I can at least identify with that, right? I can see that they're in a cafe. I can see that the streets are empty, right? So there's something that immediately is kind of calling to people. What we see is that these individuals go into a cafe at night to cope with their own loneliness, that they have no one, right? They have these empty lives and they just want to sit in a cafe so they can feel a little bit less alone. And we see that theme reflected again and again in Hopper's work. Here a woman sits and reads a book in her empty hotel room. She perhaps is a traveling salesperson or on some type of trip somewhere, but she doesn't have any greater connectivity. Generally, his works of art are going to be represented in inner cities. Today, if she was sitting on the bed, she would probably be alone with her iPhone or something of that regard. But he captures this idea of alienation, estrangement, loneliness, and isolation within the contemporary world, or office in a small city that just has nothing that's there. It's just an empty office. These individuals on a chair train, right, that are just sitting, they're kind of together, but they're all completely alone, right? And so this is the modern world that we live in, right? This is the contemporary world that we live in, that we might be surrounded by a lot of people, or we might be aware of a lot of people, or we might have a lot of friends or connections or people following us on social media, but we still are completely alone. And there's this sense of disconnection, this loss of community that we feel within our contemporary world, and he's displaying that in vivid detail, right? Let's take a look at Jackson Pollock. Most people struggle the most with Jackson Pollock, right? Because his works are so different. Rather than depicting the outer world, Pollock turned inward to represent his inner mind, right? So very similar to what we see with surrealism, going to the inner mind. He felt that studying the mind would help to uncover truths that are generally hidden from the human eye. And so the idea of Pollock and other abstract expressionists is maybe if we can reconnect or understand something that's below the surface, something that we're missing within society, maybe we can find that connectivity once again. Maybe if we can come to understand the inner psyche a little bit better, maybe we can remove some of those violent tendencies that's leading to mass extermination, for instance, of the Holocaust with 9 million people, right? What he generally does is he throws the canvas on the floor and he drips his paint over the canvas in order to create colors, in order to create images. Very similar to what we see with Kandinsky and his abstraction. He's painting music, and a lot of what Jackson Pollock listens to is jazz as he's painting his images. And so he just kind of flicks the paint on the canvas, and a lot of people take a look at his works and they just say, any 3-year-old can do that. Just give him some paint and they rub it on a canvas. And voila, you have a masterpiece. And so they just don't get it. And I don't necessarily know if showing you a digital image of this in an online lecture is going to help you to overcome that. But what I will say is if you go and stand in front of a Jackson Pollock, you will feel differently, right? You will feel that there's something there. And this was captured by a professor in the humanities department when he was going through the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. He was standing in front of Pollock's Autumn Rhythm, and there's a little bench there that he was sitting at, and there was a student who was assigned to go to the Museum of Modern Art, probably for a humanities class that she was taking in New York City, and she had her earbuds in her ears, and she was mainly looking at the floor. She was walking by, and all of a sudden, she kind of, out of the corner of her eye, she takes a glimpse of this work. As she's kind of halfway through. And as she takes a look at it, she takes a couple of steps back. And then she goes all the way from the right side and walks slowly through to the left, right? So something is happening, right? And it's hard to explain what is happening on a digital image, but there's some type of emotion. There's some type of ideas that are being represented. And it's not about telling a story like Bathsheba or the prodigal son, right? This is about just telling the inner story of the inner mind, coping with all of the chaos and anxiety of the world around us, right? So thinking about Jackson Pollock and bringing this into our contemporary discussion, if you were to represent the chaos of the modern world, because art represents the world it's created in, what would that chaos look like? And I think most of us would agree that Jackson Pollock is on par or on point for representing the chaos of the modern world. And then he invites us in to think, to reflect, to find our own meaning. And so in that way, it's this idea of connecting the artist who's not telling you what to think or necessarily how to feel in an overt or overly kind of forceful way. He's inviting you in to kind of find your own meaning, to find your own purpose. And so in that way, the art becomes alive because it's this engaging process of allowing the viewer to bring his or her own baggage or meaning to the work of art as the viewer is seeking to find meaning within it. And so this is Jackson Pollock's search to find meaning, and now it's ours to find meaning within it. And so in that way, we kind of become together. I like this quote in reference to Jackson Pollock. He says, "It seems to me that the modern painter cannot express this age, the airplane, the atom bomb, the radio in the old forms of the Renaissance or any other past culture. Each age finds its own technique. The modern artist, it seems to me, is working and expressing an inner world. In other words, expressing the energy, motion, and other inner forces." And so what he's suggesting, similar to Giacometti, is we can't represent the modern experience by representing David or Adam of Michelangelo, right? We've got to do something different because we're in a significantly different world. And so his art is going to look significantly different. So I just want to invite you, before you just completely become dismissive of him and just say that a 3-year-old can do it, go to a museum that has a Jackson Pollock, stand in front of it, and then write me back and then tell me either you don't agree and say that this is completely just him being some type of con artist, or you saw something there that you didn't necessarily see before, right? And so just as a thought to consider. All right, let's take a look at Andy Warhol. Perhaps no other artist represents our world better than him, because he's representing consumerism, and that's what our world is. After leaving the world of advertising, Warhol's art focused on representing the rise of consumerism, buying stuff, during the 1950s and 60s. And so as soldiers came home from the war, they were at war, they were getting paid as soldiers, and so they had a lot of money that they could not spend. And then the women were working in the factories, and they had a lot of excess money, and they couldn't buy a lot of things because of war rations and whatnot. And so they had excess cash. And so when the men married the women, they had some money to spend. And so you have the 1950s and 60s, you have a lot of spending, right? His works are playful representations of a world saturated in media, television, film, advertisements. Buying has become humanity's religion in the postmodern world. Entertainers have become our gods. Warhol's art glamorizes the culture of commercialization. To him, art should be superficial, not serious, because we live in a superficial society. And so his art's going to reflect the lack of depth that we have in the world today. And this is what his work of art looks like, right? We love buying things, right? I always think it's funny that the one day that we have dedicated towards giving thanks, 5 hours later, we're fighting in Walmart over purchasing a flat screen TV. So that element of consumerism runs deep. And so what he suggests is that if art should reflect the culture it's created and reflect what we value, then art should be this, right? You should go into a museum and it should look like you're going to Brolin's or Walmart. And it should be nothing more, right? So some people say, well, what's it mean, right? What's black bean soup mean or tomato rice soup mean? It means that's what we value, right? And what's interesting about Warhol is in some ways he's teasing us, teasing that superficiality, but in other ways he's kind of celebrating that, right? And so he's kind of suggesting this is who we are, why not? Why not embrace it? And so it's kind of interesting that, even though he's mocking our society in a lot of ways, everybody loves Warhol, right? People struggle with Pollock, and it's kind of, as if every time I teach Pollock, it's like dragging people along. They kind of kick they dig their heels in and kick against, me kind of giving them thoughts to think about. But Warhol, people readily embrace. There's something about this that people say, there's something I like. And I think part of what it is he's celebrating buying stuff. And that's something that we definitely value in our particular culture. All right, let's take a look at Cindy Sherman. Another major idea of postmodernism is the rise of feminism, and taking a look at some of the power dynamics of how women have been exploited. And so women now, during this time, particularly in the 1970s, they start taking the reins of their own definition and start saying that we are going to define ourselves and we're going to reflect some of the problems that are out there that women experience. And Cindy Sherman is one of the leading voices of this movement. She is known for her photographs where she places herself in the image and reflects stereotypical roles that women play in the media. That is like mother or housewife, damsel in distress, seductress, right? These very limited roles, these one-dimensional roles that women tend to play, to expose the limited view of women in the media and push for a more complex and accurate understanding of womanhood. And so as she exposes these stereotypes, such as the damsel in distress, the woman, the young lady going into the city, right, the big cold-hearted city that's going to eat her up and spit her out, we get the sense that this is just a film still. It gives you the sense, it's a photograph that gives you the sense that it could be part of a movie that we have seen, right? But as she's exploring these stereotypes, she's suggesting, is this all we got? Is this the only understanding that we can have of women in the modern world? Is that only women need to be saved? They can't save themselves, right? So she's suggesting that these roles are very limited. But what's also interesting and beautifully complex about Sherman's works is that although she's the photographer, she's also the person in the image, right? So this is a photograph of her dressed as the damsel in distress, right? So in each of these images, it's her, right? This is a woman opening up mail, reading the mail, and kind of longing to reconnect with whatever love interest or whatever the case may be. But this is her, suggesting that these stereotypes, the media, these limited representations, have influenced the way that she sees herself. And it's hard not to, right? We live in a world that tries to define the roles of manhood, the roles of womanhood. They try to say the boundaries of what the norm is. And so even though she's pushing against them and suggesting that they are limited and suggesting that we need to find, obviously, better and deeper connections for womanhood, she's also suggesting that even though that's the case, she's also influenced by them. And so then the question is, what do we do, right? As we seek to tear down or remove the past understandings and we try to find new understandings, what does that mean? How do we do that when all we know is the past, right? So it's that complicated element of we want to move forward, but how do we move forward when all we know is what we've done, right? And so it's that beautiful, rich complexity that really draws me into Cindy Sherman's works. Christo and Jean-Claude, they were a husband and wife duo that were concerned with connecting people to the arts by providing new insights to ordinary experiences. And just to kind of introduce Christo quickly, this was an art project that he did as a senior. And what he does is he takes a bottle and he wraps it and he turns it in as his senior project for an art student to graduate, right? And his art professor was like, what in the world are you doing? Why would you submit this particular work of art? Of all things that you could do, right, as a talented artist, why did you just wrap this in canvas and twine and submit it, right? I mean, what are you doing here? And the more that the professor thought about it, the more the professor kind of realized actually what he's doing, right? He's taking something that is ordinary and finding new meaning to it, right? Taking a look at our ordinary events of our day-to-day life, the things that we value, and finding new and unique ways of doing it. And heavily influenced by Dadaism, we can see the idea of a ready-made, the idea of just taking something that's already there and just trying to find new meaning to it. That's going to be carrying over with Christo. I wanted to take a look at his running fence, which he does in 1972 to 1976. It takes him a little while to do this, and it was up for a couple of months, and then it's gone forever. But this runs about 24 miles across Northern California down into the San Francisco Bay. And it was up for a couple weeks and then it was gone forever. It cost him a couple of $1 million to do this, and he has to go to every single county to get a permit. And then he has to go to every single rancher to get permission to put a hoity-toity art fence on their property, right? And so as he does this, he's getting opposition all along the way. And they did a documentary of this, of him trying to go and convince people.
This guy spent $2 million, $2.5 million in a communist Sonoma, and he's not taking anything out. He's put money in here.
That don't matter. What kind of art is that? What art is that? Hanging a piece of rag up for 50 miles. I can hang a rag up. I thought he can't even paint a picture. He's an idiot.
It isn't art. A curtain 10 feet long and 18 feet high is not art, and it's not art if it's 24 miles long.
I know something about art. I've enjoyed it for 50 years. I agree not to talk about art because I don't think it is art. I don't believe it's art.
So this is one of the many city council meetings they has to go to get them approved, and you have all these people coming in telling them what art is. This is him on the radio station trying to promote his project.
Going on, and I heard that that you got some bad news yesterday down in Marin County. You want to tell us about that?
We had public hearings, and Commission denied building permits. And most basic discussion was by the Commission that they doubt an artistic quality of the project. Everything we apply, about the ecological issue, about the technical feasibility of the project, everything was accepted by the Commission.
And for the safety?
We appeal already Marin County, and we can have board supervisor to review our appeal the next 2 to 4 weeks. They accept all also.
But they don't accept that it is art.
I'll bet you $1 right now that I can go out and put your curtain up, and I won't have a complaint. Now.
But he is a great
You know why?
Because you're a great politician.
No, because everybody in this country knows me. But when a stranger comes in, they're just a little skeptical. They don't understand. See? No, that's right. Now, you just stop and think about that a little bit.
Here he's going to go to one of the ranchers and talk with him about the design of the running fence.
Yeah, I think he touched Mafia. He lived here. And like, yeah, first we start to talk, John, before I put the letter. Letter is with the contract. Yeah, it's letter with the contract, but I don't think we should give him the letter now. I think when, I don't know what kind of man is. Now, be very careful.
You know, if you kill a cow, you can go home.
Back to New York. Very cheap.
John, now, careful.
Very inexpensive project.
Very careful.
If you put them in September, everything is dry.
Yes.
If people, they go back and forth, if there was a lot of people to go through there, people, awful, some they're not careful at all, they throw up a cigarette.
Yes.
I know.
On fire.
Yes, exactly. And you know what, Mr. Bellatori? I am just as scared as you of those people. Because this is our running fence. Everything we have in the world we put to build it.
24 hours a day to watch the fence to the all public intersection. The fence is designed that will be seen only by public roads.
And that gate will be locked and we will have a guard.
No,
which is more than is now.
First I tell you, the village project, look.
But they're going to be offering it.
Offering what?
And just to get down to see where it's coming out of the ocean. That
no, this is the...
But this is the point.
Ocean Marine, look.
We cannot open it to the public.
The thing is that I don't know if Mr. von Schottenstein is aware of the fact that first we are in a very big rush of getting the signature from Mr. Titus.
No, we have the copy of the contract.
Yes.
So this is them trying to get another permit that they have to go through. So constantly met with opposition again and again and again. But what's kind of interesting about this is, did you notice what people were talking about? Did you notice what they were talking about at a city council meeting, or what they were talking about on the streets? They were talking about what is and what isn't art, right? Same conversation that we see with Dadaism, right? The Dadaism begins this discussion about what is and what isn't art. And so the question is, how often do you think these people in the rural parts of Northern California actually sit down and talk about what is and what is not art, right? Similar to the ideas of John Dewey, art should be about experience. It shouldn't just be about hanging something in a museum and then just visiting it, right? It should be about engaging people in a discussion and ideas. It should be about reflecting what we value. It should be immersive. It should be engaging. It should be about doing, right? The art is doing, art is living, right? And so that's exactly what Christo is seeking to do with his running fence, because not only does he go out there to each person and talk with them individually about why this is important, he then gets them out there and actually digging holes to put the fence up. And so it's about bringing people together. That art is about bringing people together. Because how often are people, the average person, going to go to an art museum or a gallery, right? Not that often, right? That art needs to reconnect. That's what's kind of when the struggles of the art world is it's disconnected from the public. It needs to reconnect with what we value, right? So another question to think about is, well, what does it all mean, right? As he puts this fence up in the kind of this rural ranching area in Northern California, what happens is if you see this, right, the fence up, or if you're traveling back and forth between Rexburg and Salt Lake, and you just see this kind of boring, landscape of Idaho. You just kind of see patches of potatoes again and again and again, right? All of a sudden, it starts to lose meaning. It starts to lose its significance. But if one day you're traveling down to Salt Lake and you see a 18-foot cloth fence that's just kind of running off into the sunset, you stop your car, you get out, you start to wonder what's going on here. You notice you're surrounded by 5 other people who are having the same kind of concerns or questions, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of an art conversation. So art needs to be about connecting people. It needs to be about connecting ideas and bringing people into this discussion. It's a couple other projects that he worked on. Just wanted to share with you to leave off today. This one is the Surrounded Islands. He wrapped some islands in southern Florida around the Miami area. He just kind of goes out there, gives this canvas and wraps them in this pink canvas. And then he leaves them up for a couple weeks, and then they're gone forever. And so the idea is not to leave an ecological footprint. It's just to bring awareness, to cause people to kind of think about things that they wouldn't normally think about, right? Things that have becoming maybe meaningless in the world, that he's trying to reintroduce that meaning, trying to reintroduce that significance for us. He does this one in Northern California. He does a sister project in Japan during the 90s. This one cost him about $45 million to do. And this is kind of an East meets West sort of idea. So he's not always wrapping things per se, but he is trying to adding fabric and cloth to find new ways to see things that are ordinary, to make them seem more extraordinary. And this one he did in 2005. This one is Gates. What he does is he quote unquote wraps Central Park, and he puts all of these gates up, and the gates just kind of like flags. They just kind of blow with the wind. This one took him about 20 years to get approved. He was trying for 2 decades to get the city to approve this particular project. And you would think that New York becoming, very artsy and open-minded, as New York, the stereotype of New York and New Yorkers tends to be, that they would be welcoming. They would embrace Christo and his art project, but they didn't. It took them a long time to get this one finally approved. And then in 2005, they finally did approve it, and it was up for a couple of weeks, and it's gone forever. But notice the people walking under it, right? Notice the interaction. Notice that, how many people actually go to a museum, or what kind of people actually want to go to a museum? And here we have more of the common public, the majority of the population coming in and actually experiencing art. And whether they like it or not, that's another, topic to discuss. But they're at least interacting with it, and they're at least having conversations about art that they normally wouldn't be having. And so that in and of itself is something valuable. That the idea here is connecting art with the artist with the public or the viewer, and bringing that discussion to light. That it should be about things that we value, things that are kind of ordinary to us, and then trying to find new insights, the new commentary on trying to find new values and to find new, deeper meaning to them. And this is what a lot of contemporary art is going to be doing. It's not going to be all this, right? Because each individual artist is doing something different and unique, but they have similar kind of mindsets or similar hopes and aspirations within their art, is to get us to see the world around us in a new way and to kind of reflect on that. And so in some ways it might look a little ugly at first, but what I want you to do, rather than just saying that's ugly, therefore it must be dumb, right? That's kind of the problem with that kind of logical kind of mindset is, well, if it looks ugly to me, it must be something that's not valuable. I want you to think instead, that looks different. I wonder why the artist chose to do it that way. And it's going to take more work on our part. It's going to take more understanding. It might take us to learn more about the artist, more about the purpose of what the artist is seeking to do. But as we do that, right, as we kind of put that legwork out there or legwork into understanding it, we can come with a richer understanding of not only the art, but the world in which we live. And I think that is truly valuable.